The sunny island state of Singapore was once a British colony. It gained its independence in 1965. With a population of nearly 6 million on an island of about 700 square kilometers, this immigrant society is a melting pot of cultures with three main ethnic groups, namely the Chinese, the Malays, and the Indians. But English is our first and official language. With strong leadership and the right policies, Singapore has experienced an economic miracle, transforming from one of the poorest countries in the world in the 1960s to being an advanced global city today. In this documentary, we will look at another miracle, the Choral Miracle of Singapore, how the choral scene has developed over the past decades. Singaporeans are by nature and culture a relatively shy people. Spontaneous singing is not an observed tradition at festivities or social gatherings. Without institutions offering conducting degrees until recent years, the choral standards achieved by forerunners who majored in literature, mathematics, physics, and other degrees at university were nothing short of spectacular. For a young nation, we have come a long way on the road less traveled.
Hello, welcome to Singapore and the Victoria Concert Hall. In this episode, we will look at the uniqueness of Singapore choirs, the challenges we face, and the future of our choral scene. Come, let's find out more about the choral singing in Singapore. Having pushed the frontiers and put Singapore on the world map of choral singing, this quartet on stage are often regarded as the forerunners of the choral scene in Singapore. Jennifer and Nelson have been active since the 80s. Hui and I started in the 90s. Thank you, friends, for being here today. What is unique about the choral singing in Singapore?
Our system is so different from the US and the European countries such that our singers, from school choir especially, they are not necessarily music readers. In fact, at least in my choir, more than 90% of them don't even have music background. And yet we are doing very, very high level music. And this is a situation often when I come across with conductors from other countries, they couldn't understand how we do it, how we even teach a non-music reader music like this and to achieve the standard. So to them, I think this is a very unique situation.
What is unique about Singapore is we could stand for hours to for practice.
We have discipline.
We have the discipline, the tolerance level very high.
I think among the Asian countries especially, the Singapore choir's repertoire probably stand out by itself because we are basically an English-speaking country.
Yeah.
So we have the advantage of having both the repertoire from the West and the East as well. Yeah. So I think that makes us a little bit more different from other countries.
With a symbiotic relationship between choir's growth and repertoire, we have benefited a lot from that. The immersion in the international choral scene is really priceless. What they picked up about their value system, the character developments, and of course, music making, it is very, very beneficial.
Oh yes, yeah. I think the Chinese sayings explain it best. It says that 读万卷书不如行万里路, meaning that you can study all you want, it can never match the actual experience of traveling and seeing and to emerge into that situation. So I think in the earlier years, our student and our choirs has benefited a lot from that.
Yeah, definitely.
The unique, I would say, mettle of choirs here in Singapore is that it can be found in the personality of the people themselves. A very driven society, a society that tries to prove itself out there. Most observedly, the level of repertoire that has been engaged by the choirs, more and more difficult repertoire, even from the high school arena.
Being in the CEP, I think it was one of the many factors that inspired me to continue to pursue music at a higher level, at tertiary level. It really opened up this wonderful world of vocal music and inspired me to want to pursue singing as a second instrument.
If I didn't have the choral experience, there's a high chance that I might not have pursued music. The choral experience I had in secondary school and then JC continued to cement a love for music as a whole, which then, when it came to JC, then it became more viable to think about the possibility of pursuing music as a career.
In terms of character development, being in the CEP taught us how to be disciplined, how to manage our time. I think during those years, we really spent a lot of time at choir practices. In terms of wanting to achieve that peak of excellence, we really gave our best shot each time we worked on something. Yeah.
There was a great emphasis on rigor, and there was a great emphasis on being the best that we could in terms of music making. And I think that comes along with the number of practices we had per week and the amount of time and effort that we put in. So that must have been something that contributed towards my personal growth in terms of learning how to make music and learning how to appreciate music.
I only joined choir in JC, so I was in Victoria Junior College, and that was my first experience with choir. So I was pretty lucky. Both years I got to travel overseas. After working as auditor for about 4.5 years, that I decided to take a total change and try to become a conductor. So I think the foundation during those times helped me a lot. Yeah.
The end of year CEP camp
The camp,
Yeah, it was
non-SYF year,
was something that excited a lot of us.
About maybe 10 to 12 singers.
from different choral excellence choirs come together. Then I also got a chance to sing with a different conductor.
And we got to experiment with exciting repertoire.
It was the first time I was exposed to contemporary composers like Alberto Grau. Yeah, and I observed how excited everybody else in the room was to approach music in different ways under different conductors. I think that has really influenced me a lot as a conductor till today.
That was really the first time also that you feel that this art of choral singing is something bigger than you. It's bigger than your choir.
Friendships that we formed during choral music making also were very enduring and lasting.
Get to meet people that until this day in the choral scene I still see active.
The importance of collaboration, the importance of exposing students to like-minded peers from all across Singapore.
Did your choral training contribute to your pursuit as a solo singer?
I would say definitely for me it did, because my first interactions with singing and serious singing was in choir, in school choirs, and I feel like the focus that I learned from those groups and the attention to detail and the pursuit of making beautiful sound imbued with meaning completely falls in line with the training I would later receive when I went to university. So I think that my experiences as a chorister really primed me really well for my training. And also, I think more importantly, I fell in love with singing through choir.
This devotion to excellence, I think, was something that accompanies me to this day. And I grew up a choir girl as well. And so since 9 in primary school, I started singing in choirs. And so choral music and everything that goes along with it is a really big part of my musical understanding. I remember when I first went to the UK, I was so thankful for the experience in choirs in Singapore, because I only realized after I got there how much, like what a rojak it was, you know, the different genres of music that it exposed us to, whether it's folk song or sacred, and the different languages. I was so thankful that when I got there, you know, all these different genres and different flavors had been a part of my palette already. And the interest to understand the human voice, how to sing better, how to be first a better chorister and then a better singer and musician.
In my time as a Singaporean student chorister, the skills that I picked up were skills that I would find many years later. In fact, after graduating from school and joining professional choirs in America, that these same skills at that level in my schooling days were immediately transferable to the professional field.
I absolutely agree. And I think one other skill that accompanies me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is the skill of listening. And when I went overseas, I joined some ensembles as well. We did small group singing, or we sing in oratorios, and I'm always surprised how the voice of my previous, choral conductor would ring in my ears when we were doing practices. Yeah.
I'm so thankful to know that this ripple effect of choral excellence translated into you being a professional singer now and exploring your dream around the world.
If I compare choirs during my time and now, I would say firstly the vocal production is much better.
Vocally, most of the school choirs have improved a lot from our days. One of the main reasons is that a lot of the younger conductors have gone overseas to study, have taken up lessons themselves to up their own capacity in music learning. So they're able to come back and share with the younger generation.
I would say that's also because there's much more exposure. Because of exposure of choirs being able to go overseas for competition, they bring back with them their experience of what they see over there in terms of teaching, in terms of pedagogy, back to the choirs in Singapore through YouTube, through Facebook, through all the social medias. Our students are actually able to have access to all these different videos and recordings so that they can actually hear all these choirs sing in the native language of those songs.
Choral music is not just about personal enjoyment, the beauty of lush lines or like beautiful harmonies that are very staple cadences and all that make you feel good. That's definitely one sort of music, but there are so many other types of music as well that can not just work on your heart work, but also works your brain, works all sorts of connections within your body. It challenges you beyond your limits, and also beyond what you choose to want to understand.
In order to have this wholesome development, right? And that has to come with rigor and the spirit of excellence. I mean, that's no shortcut to it.
Everyone loves having fast food, but I think it's also important for us to experience all types of cuisine. If we talk about having a balanced education, we talk about having a balanced diet, then we should have all of that in choral music as well. I think it's important to also respect that they need space to grow, and they probably want that space and time as well, and that opportunity.
And they may not know what they want.
Precisely.
You have to educate and expose.
They're only 13. As an educator, it's important for us to respect that and push them beyond their boundaries, because more often than not, they actually would appreciate it. They grow to love the songs that you will never expect them to love. And they tell you, hey, that challenging piece was my favorite piece in all 4 years of my life in secondary school choir, then you know that that's the way to go.
Yeah. The emphasis is now moving away from the competitive element. Without the competitive element, or without the element of battering your standards and your ability, or trying to achieve the best possible music making experience, are we missing out on something that could be magical, that could be really memorable, that we could have achieved? The people who could have benefited from the more robust program would be missing out.
The de-emphasis of competition in SYFs and in the local scene as well, it actually makes the choral scene more inclusive. There are many different types of choirs serving different functions and purpose, coexisting together as a system. And I think that is something that is very encouraging.
What are the challenges that we face in the near future?
I think this is very hard to answer without touching on generational issues. I think the current generation of conductors and probably choirs themselves, they want different things. They are much more into inclusivity, which is very different from our generation, perhaps. I think for us, our generation, if you want to call us the forerunners, we were on a quest, almost, to stand out and to not necessarily make a name for ourselves, but to stand proud of our work and what we did musically, and with our choir kids who don't have this music background, but every time they got an award or they performed well on stage, it gave them that boost of confidence and courage in their lives. You can't even say like in their studies, but like overall they suddenly felt that they could conquer a lot of things, including that next horrible maths problem or something. Those are all the intangibles, I think, that many people don't see that result from a really good performance or a competition win. I think they really win in that respect. Now the current generation, I think they want to have every voice heard, and I think they want some sort of equality. They don't actually want to stand out in that way. So with that, everything starts to average out a little bit, including repertoire, performance levels, maybe.
Does inclusivity have to be mutually exclusive from being excellent? It seems like in the 90s or early 2000s, there was a very strong sense of spirit of excellence, right? It may not be just to win awards, but it's just to do the best that we possibly can within the constraints, and a value system of believing that, they have to go through refiner's fire to find the character, to have the integrity to say that we have done our best. Is that something that is slightly diluted?
There are so many demands on their time and energy school-wise. I would start my JC choir rehearsals with a nap because they would come in so tired. They were so stressed, and there were so many things that were being demanded of them. And so many expectations, including their own, that in the end a lot of it was self-inflicted, right? Because that's what they thought people expected of them. That I just let them sleep off their stress. And after that we would have the most fantastic rehearsal. And then they felt empowered by the music again. But over the years I had to spend longer and longer with this mental prep and readiness to sing and to be with other people and to ask them to be their best. It really took a long time, and actually that took its toll on me because I felt that I had to bring my pom-poms to every rehearsal.
Kids nowadays have more things in their life. even in schools, and you can see that they end school later and later, and we start our CCA later and later and end at about 7:30, sometimes in the secondary school end at 6:30. So I think I agree with Jen that they get very tired, and to them, you know, in Chinese we say 心有余而力不足, you know, they want to try very hard, but then physically and mentally they're not able to.
Yes, we have to accept that students have less time for rehearsals now because they've got all sorts of commitments. It's very different from the past whereby students just specialize in one CCA. There are actually other choices for the students. They did not join the school's choir. There are actually choirs outside. There are many choices that the students can make for themselves.
Whether it's sometimes I don't know, it's a chicken and egg issue. Whether is it the kids are stretched too much and therefore we want to keep trying to protect space for them, and therefore, you know, things like no Saturday rehearsals. There is currently a lack of time for kids to really delve deep into something. So I always wish that more space can be created for the students to actually invest into something richer. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I think there is some form of dilution.
And there is a huge shift in paradigm in the education policy, and that affects the choir development very much. The removal of the achievement of the Performing Arts CCA from the KPI of the school. Before that, we have things like Sustained Achievement Award and all these things. As much as the ministry doesn't want them to emphasize too much on academic, but it has become that way.
So the award was good in encouraging schools to keep or sustain what is already good.
One of the very strong signal that when you remove this award away, the strong signal sent to the school is it is not that important.
Yeah.
And they actually take it that way.
Yeah, study is more important.
And of course, later on when they changed the SYF system to the distinction accomplishment system, and it has just made things worse. Conductors, choirs actually compromise with standard because it is so much easier to get distinction. If I sing a mediocre piece and I can do it nicely and get a distinction, why should I stretch myself? Why should I stretch my singer's ability to teach them something more advanced?
Actually, over the years, they took away a number of rehearsal hours. Some schools started to say, no, we don't want to have concerts anymore, because that would be also the way to offer them a breadth of music beyond the 3 pieces that we learn and perfect, right, for SYF. Then you start to become efficient or economical in your choices. And I think there's obviously this trickle-down effect.
So it's a pity that given the situation that our students no longer experience the best of the music that they can at that age.
Yeah.
In the past, I think everyone aspires to look up, right, at the top 20%. And now maybe people were focusing on who did not get the top.
I think the whole maybe educational philosophy has changed a little bit. Like I said, this inclusivity thing, you want everyone to feel good about themselves. It's all about self-esteem. So, you know, in one of my schools, I would walk by all these Sec 1 classes, and every Sec 1 class had an award. Most polite class, most neat class, most disciplined. It's everybody gets an award. Current generation is dealing with this. So then there is really a sameness to everything. We could still be excellent, but now everybody's excellent. Which means nobody is excellent.
So what do you hope to see in the future?
I would like to see more collaborations between conductors.
How do we use technology to help us?
Creative energy and performance mode, creative energy and repertoire planning, and maybe creative energy in integrating different aspects of art forms into one.
Much greater development in the professional scene for choirs.
the scene grows to be much more well respected in terms of how holistic education that choral singing can provide a person throughout his or her lifetime.
I'm still hopeful. I think, I'm sure every generation goes through this. Like, oh, we're not as resilient as our forefathers. Oh, we're not, I think every generation goes through this. I think it's a cycle. Something unique will appear again.
When you come down to maybe a little bit down, you will shoot up again. That's why I'm hopeful. Never give up. Try for your best.
The educational policy which stated by the government to say that we want a more all-rounded, well-balanced education, coupled with the right policy, the right direction, and school actually carried out that. So we have been through, I like to say, the golden ages of Singapore choral music.
Because we are in the golden age.
4 of us at some point were competitors on stage, locally or internationally. We are all so different and all can be good. We don't have to compromise, we don't have to be like each other, but we all walked out a path that is respectable. As we look back at the past 3 decades, we can be thankful that the Ministry of Education and the National Arts Council, with a clear vision and committed resources, have played a pivotal role in fueling the growth of the choral singing in Singapore. The Choral Excellence Program provided the impetus to our schools to sustain the level of commitment and to maintain their choral standards. This is coupled with talented pioneer conductors who have brought our singing to the international level and carved out a clearer path for future generations of conductors. In his speech at the 1991 SYF Choral Competition, the late Dr. Tay Ing Soon shared 2 visions. The first is that somewhere in the near future, a choral group capable of representing Singapore at international events will emerge and make Singapore famous as a country for choral excellence. The second is that our young singers will continue singing, that in the next 5 to 10 years, dozens of choral groups will blossom here in Singapore, bringing the pleasure and joy of singing to all. These visions have become reality. Today, Singapore plays host to 2 major international choral festivals, the Orientale Concentus and the Singapore International Choral Festival. And our choirs have flown the Singapore flag high since the 70s, winning Grand Prix and top prizes around the world. Today, besides church and institution choirs, there are many active community choirs, from non-auditioned groups to the award-winning ones. To quote the Greek philosopher Aristotle, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The journey to excellence is not without rigor and discomfort, but without which we will never arrive at resilience, perseverance, and excellence. How will our choral singing develop from here? There's a concern that if the singing in schools focuses on fun and accessible music, diluting the rigor and the spirit of excellence, we may lose a future generation of skillful singers and informed audiences for choral music. I hope that while we move forward and upward with new branches of singing, our choirs will continue to deepen their roots with timeless music from the great masters and quality music from the living composers. We have to sing until the song takes root and the tree grows strong. Before I go, I leave you with the recent performance of a community choir that won double Grand Prix in Europe last year. Enjoy and goodbye.
Uma só